Alo Minglaba, hello everyone and welcome to MMTV's weekly news program. I'm Quentin Covington and I'll be bringing you the latest updates from Myanmar. In today's broadcast, we'll be covering significant developments relating to Myanmar's ongoing challenges, including international diplomatic efforts, humanitarian aid, and the evolving conflict within the country. We'll also highlight discussions from the 79th United Nations General Assembly, where justice and accountability for Myanmar were on the agenda. And we'll explore the critical issues of civilian displacement, support for vulnerable groups, and the impact of military actions on civilians. Plus, we'll have updates on the latest regional diplomatic activities, including ASEAN and international responses to the situation in Myanmar. Let's get into the headlines. First, Deputy Minister of Human Rights addresses justice and accountability issues in Myanmar during a side event at the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Next, NUG's Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management supports internally displaced elderly and vulnerable groups, including those affected by floods with food, medicine, and financial aid on International Day of Older Persons. Next, the U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice, Beth Van Schaak, visits Thailand to discuss Myanmar. Then, 237 civil society groups urged the exclusion of Myanmar military junta representatives from ASEAN meetings. Next, UN Special Rapporteur on Myanmar's human rights to visit Australia for discussions on Myanmar's affairs. Then, the Thai Foreign Minister urges a peaceful resolution to the Myanmar conflict. After that, KNDF attributes the deaths of 18 medics to the negligence of officials. Then, over 30 civilians killed in aerial bombardments in Special Administrative Zone 1 over the past 3 months. Next, over 90 people killed in Rakhine due to airstrikes in a single month. And finally, watermelon mailboxes set up to securely transmit internal information about the military junta. Now, let's get into the details. NUG Deputy Minister of Human Rights addresses justice and accountability issues in Myanmar during a side event at the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. At the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly, held on September 25th in the United States, the NUG Deputy Minister of Human Rights, Woo Aung Chaumo, participated in a side event focusing on justice and accountability in Myanmar. The roundtable discussion, titled Paving the Way for Accountability, Truth, and Reconciliation, a Reparations Trust Fund for Victims of Violence in Myanmar, brought together several high-level figures, including Gambia's Minister of Justice, the U.S. Global Criminal Justice Ambassador, and the head of the Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar, or IIMM. During the session, Woo Aung Chaumo emphasized the necessity of finding innovative solutions within the international justice system to break the cycle of impunity enjoyed by the Myanmar military regime. He urged the international community to make better use of available resources, measure the impact of justice efforts effectively, and work towards implementing necessary reforms to establish transitional justice domestically. He also underscored the importance of a victim-centered approach, highlighting the critical role that women's organizations and civil society groups must play in this process. The participation of both domestic and international groups was considered vital for successful reconciliation efforts in Myanmar. Next, NUG's Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management supports international displaced elderly and vulnerable groups, including those affected by floods, with food, medicine, and financial aid on International Day of Older Persons. On October 1st, the National Unity Government, or NUG, Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management commemorated International Day of Older Persons by providing crucial support to internally displaced families, including elderly individuals and those affected by recent floods. In addition to food and medicine, financial donations were distributed to vulnerable groups. This year's theme for the International Day of Older Persons is Aging with Dignity, the importance of strengthening care and support systems for older persons worldwide. This global awareness campaign calls for improved care systems to protect the dignity and rights of older people, ensuring they receive the support they need to live with respect and security. The ministry emphasized that Myanmar's elderly population has faced growing hardships due to the ongoing military conflict, which has resulted in widespread human rights violations. Many elderly citizens have been affected by deliberate military attacks, including arson, airstrikes, and shelling. These attacks have led to mass displacement, with many elderly individuals left vulnerable. The NUG acknowledges the elderly as an essential force within Myanmar's revolution and vows to continue supporting their right to safety and access to essential resources. Next, the U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice, Beth Van Schaak, visits Thailand to discuss Myanmar. Beth Van Schaak, the U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice, will visit Thailand from October 4th to 7th to address issues related to Myanmar. According to the U.S. Department of State's announcement on October 2nd, Ambassador Van Schaak will meet with Thai government officials, civil society groups, and academic leaders to discuss ongoing atrocities in Myanmar and explore pathways for justice and accountability. The U.S. has been vocal about its commitment to ensuring that those responsible for crimes in Myanmar are held accountable. Ambassador Van Schaak will reaffirm the United States' position in standing in solidarity with the victims and survivors of Myanmar's ongoing crisis. She will also discuss measures to create conditions that allow Rohingya refugees to return to their homes voluntarily, safely, and with dignity. The ambassador's visit is part of a broader U.S. effort to advocate for human rights and justice in Myanmar. Next, 237 civil society groups urged the exclusion of Myanmar military junta representatives from ASEAN meetings. On October 2nd, 237 civil society organizations called for the exclusion of Myanmar's military junta representatives from all ASEAN meetings. Among the groups making this appeal were Defend Myanmar Democracy, the Blood Money Campaign, India for Myanmar, and others. These organizations sent open letters to ASEAN member states and partner countries urging them to take action. The groups argue that allowing junta representatives to attend ASEAN meetings would legitimize the Myanmar military regime. They emphasize that such participation would facilitate the junta's ability to build international relations, access funding, and gain resources, effectively enabling the regime to consolidate power and maintain control over the country. The civil society groups also warned that this could undermine efforts by the people of Myanmar to establish a federal union and achieve self-determination. Despite widespread calls for reform, the military junta has already participated in more than 500 ASEAN meetings, even after committing atrocities and engaging in human rights abuses. In October of 2021, ASEAN had decided that only non-political representatives could attend its summit meetings on behalf of Myanmar. However, the 237 civil society organizations urged ASEAN to review its decision and replace junta representatives with members of Myanmar's National Unity Government. Next, the UN Special Rapporteur on Myanmar's human rights to visit Australia for discussions on Myanmar affairs. Tom Andrews, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar, announced on September 30th that he will visit Australia from October 1st to the 10th. During his trip, Andrews plans to meet with Australian government officials in Canberra to discuss the country's stance on Myanmar's human rights crisis and explore ways that Australia can offer support. In addition to meeting with government representatives, the Special Rapporteur will also travel to Sydney and Melbourne, where he will engage with civil society organizations, humanitarian experts, and representatives from the Myanmar community living in Australia. Andrews intends to meet with individuals who have fled Myanmar since the military coup in February of 2021 to gain insights into their experiences and the challenges they face. His visit is expected to strengthen the international response to the ongoing human rights violations in Myanmar. Next, Thai Foreign Minister urges a peaceful resolution to the Myanmar conflict. During the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly, held from September 24th to the 28th in New York, Thailand's Foreign Minister, Mr. Maurice Sangiampongsa, called for a peaceful resolution to Myanmar's ongoing conflict. The minister emphasized Thailand's role as a neighboring country offering humanitarian assistance and advocating for peace. Sangiampongsa further highlighted Thailand's participation in international efforts to foster peace and stability, particularly through initiatives at the United Nations. He discussed the need for reforms at the UN to enhance its capacity to address global challenges, including armed conflicts. Thailand has also been actively pursuing membership in the BRICS, or Brazilian, Russia, India, China, and South Africa Economic Group. According to reports, Myanmar military junta is seeking observer status in BRICS to bypass international sanctions and secure financial support, an effort to gain legitimacy on the global stage. Next, KNDF attributes the deaths of 18 medics to the negligence of officials. On October 1st, the Karenni Nationalities Defense Force, or KNDF, released a statement attributing the deaths of 18 medics in Kayah State to negligence on the part of training officials. The medics tragically drowned on September 11th while crossing a stream during a training exercise. According to the KNDF report, the incident resulted from poor preparation and a failure to assess the risks associated with the training. It was revealed that both the head of the training school and an instructor had consumed alcohol before the exercise, and the decision to conduct the nighttime training session had not been properly communicated to all personnel. While the officials had no intent to cause harm, their lack of safety precautions led to the medics' deaths. The KNDF has stated that it will continue its investigation into the incident and will release a comprehensive report to the families of the victims, the relevant battalions, and the public. This incident occurred during the second session of a 4-month training program for frontline medics. Next, over 30 civilians killed in aerial bombardments in Special Administrative Zone 1 over the past 3 months. Over the past 3 months, more than 30 civilians have been killed and at least 90 injured due to airstrikes conducted by Myanmar's military junta in Special Administrative Zone 1, which includes Lashao. On October 2nd, the Military National Democratic Alliance Army, or MNDAA, released a report detailing the aerial bombardments that took place from July to September of 2024. The MNDAA confirmed that the junta carried out at least 25 aerial attacks targeting both conflict zones and civilian areas. In regions such as Lukai and Thani, which are not classified as conflict zones, airstrikes caused widespread destructions to homes, schools, and public infrastructure. Following the capture of Lashao by the MNDAA on August 3rd, the junta has intensified its airstrikes, prompting over 1,000 civilians to flee their homes in fear of continued attacks. Next, over 90 people killed in Rakhine due to airstrikes in a single month. In September of 2024, the military junta's airstrikes in Rakhine State resulted in the deaths of more than 90 people, with at least 66 others injured. The attacks primarily targeted areas controlled by the Arakan Army, AA, as well as regions where fierce battles were taking place between the junta and AA forces. Maungdaw Township suffered the highest number of casualties, with 50 people killed. In 2 days alone, September 8th and 9th, airstrikes claimed the lives of 67 people, including over 50 at an AA detention center in Maungdaw and 17 in Paktao. Additionally, a refugee camp in Tandwe was bombed on September 26th, leading to the deaths of 16 people. The Arakan Army announced that it has successfully captured several key towns in Rakhine State, including Paktao, Minbya, Rak-U, and others. Despite these gains, fierce battles continue in areas such as Maungdaw and Gwa, as the junta fights to regain control over strategic locations. And lastly, watermelon mailboxes have been set up to securely transmit internal information about the military junta. On October 1st, watermelon mailboxes were introduced to securely transmit internal information about the military junta. This system, developed by Myanmar students with IT skills, allows individuals to send sensitive information related to the junta activities safely. The platform supports the submission of text files, images, and video files. These mailboxes are accessible via the website tadinpay.com or thadinpay.com or Telegram at tadinpaybot, tadinpaybot. The system is designed to protect the identities of whistleblowers and is supported by technicians, members of the People's Defense Forces, revolutionary groups, and civil servants involved in the civil disobedience movement. These have been the key highlights of this week's news. Myanmar people continue to strive for democracy and human rights in various ways every single day. Therefore, we urge all the people and countries worldwide to support the reform of democracy and fundamental human rights in Myanmar. Thank you for watching MMTV News. Stay tuned for more updates, and we'll see you again next week. Jejiba.